Throwing away food is like stealing from the tables of those who are poor and hungry. This is what Pope Francis had said on the issue of food waste and food leftover. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our group presentation on the topic Investigation of the Causes of Food Left Over at the University for Peace Cafeteria. My group comprises of Minsun, Lasse, Elias, Som, and me, Niranjan. Now, these are the contents we'll be briefly covering: introduction, research objective, research question, critical reflection on the ethics process, changes made to the interview guide after the first interview, summary and critical reflection on the qualitative coding, and overall reflection in relation to course study, conclusion, as well as references. Now, talking about the introduction, food leftovers are the surplus food which remained unconsumed at the end of a meal. Whenever the food leftover is not used in any way whatsoever, it becomes a food waste. And food waste is not only the waste of valuable nutritional resources, but also of land, water, capital, energy. And it has a negative impact on the environment and economy of the individual countries. Now, UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, released a food waste index report of 2021, and it has some great revelations that it reveals 17% of the food which was available at the consumer level were wasted in the year 2019. Now, in 2019 alone, the hunger impacted around 600 million people, and another 3 billion were unable to have a healthy diet. According to the National Resource Defense Council of the United States of America, Americans are tossing out equivalent of 165 billion in food each year. Universities across the United States are contributing to this dilemma. The colleges' campuses produce about 22 million pounds of food waste annually. Now, the environmental impacts are many. Talking about it, the food lost and waste counts for about 8% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Nearly 30% of the world's agricultural land which we have today is currently occupied to produce that food which has been never unconsumed or has been wasted. Now, this is talking about the social impact. You can see two different worlds. There is food surplus, there is food in poverty, food there. Talking about the investigation of the causes left over, this is the UPEACE cafeteria. People go in lines, get the menu, move ahead with respect to the delicious food which is being served there, and I would say unintentionally or due to some unavoidable circumstances, food is being left over in these pictures. Now, the research objective of our group has to identify what are the causes of the current food leftover or the waste situation in the UPEACE cafeteria in order to reduce the food leftover issue. By reducing the food leftover issue, we can reduce the environmental impact of the university for a better sustainability.
During our research, we asked the research question, what are the reasons students throw away edible food at the University for Peace cafeteria? So we used a sampling method, convenience sampling, that was being representational of the student body with one-on-one interviews. We selected 5 students to be interviewed about their habits at the cafeteria with food. The 5 students were broken between one person for each person in the research team, who were selected for one-on-one interviews to gain insights within a timely manner within the scope of the project, to partake in a pilot study to better understand the issues around food waste, why they throw away food, and why they don't finish all the food that is put on their plate. And so we identified people eligible for the study who were current students, mixed gender group, and a variety of backgrounds from different countries and cultures to reflect the diversity at University for Peace. And upon reflecting on the ethics process, we developed a consent form, ensured that it was comprehensive and was shared with all parties well in advance, ensured that it was all relevant to the study, and it was all relevant to all parties, ensure that it did not carry unneeded burden on the interviewees, and all questions or concerns to be addressed from the interviewees in a timely and efficient manner, and information is ensured to be private and will not be publicly revealed or disclosed for any reason. And then finding things and identifying things that may cause harm or otherwise unwarranted distress, such as if someone has an eating disorder, anxiety around food or food waste, or shame or distress around being labeled as a food waster or someone that is contributing to environmental harm, and ensuring that everyone was fully aware of what they were being asked of throughout the process, as in terms of questions, and the ability for participants to stop participating at any time for any reason, including after the interview, if they did not wish their information to be included in the final study, and required that everyone review and process all the appropriate documents in order to ensure that there was full understanding of what was being asked throughout the interview.
As per instructions, we made a list of interview questions, and all of these were obviously perfect immediately. So we just went ahead and did all interviews with this first set of questions. Yeah, no, that's not exactly what happened. Our first interviewer, Zoom, ran headfirst into a proverbial wall, and the question set had to be redone. These three interviewers are the embodiment of Zoom during the first interview. It took him about 20 minutes, which is a little on the longer side, so several questions were shoved to the back and revamped as extra questions. He also noticed that it might be an interviewee's behavior to start naming hypothetical causes of food disposal that don't necessarily apply to them or others when the questions are too open. So several questions were put under review and ultimately changed. Instead of just asking what was the reason for the food disposal, and were there other reasons, and what are the reasons for other people, and do these apply to you? The questions now also went into the scale of the cause. Is it a minor or a major cause for the interviewee in question? Otherwise, answers like "I'm sometimes in a hurry" would be regarded as on the same level as "the plates are always filled to the brim and that's the reason why I throw away my food." After the other interviews had taken place and had been transcribed, which by the way happened in no less than three different ways, one being handwritten notes, then typed up notes, and also complete audio transcripts. So we went ahead and started on the coding work in a manual narrative analysis of the interviews. We went ahead and created a process including a legend that specifically looked at major and minor causes of food disposal, as mentioned by the interviewee. Additionally, we created a category specifically for the hunches of our interviewees on other people's main causes for food disposal. We also looked at their feelings and attitudes towards the concept of food disposal and highlighted their suggestions for possible solutions. This is the deductive part of our coding. So three columns for the several causal themes that might pop up appear. The major causes, the minor causes, and then suspected causes for other people in the eyes of the interviewee. So three big themes became apparent to us when we started inductively coding. Portion size, food dislike, and repetitive food. So with three interviewees listing portion size as a major cause for their food disposal. Little reflection, we as researchers decide and interpret and group the info. This is just what coding means. So of course, a lot of the meaning or a bit of the meaning gets lost with this process. Some coding also happened for the attitudes of the interviewees towards the food disposal. Spoiler, people generally agree that it's not a good thing. And surprisingly, two interviewees mentioned that they feel like not a lot of their peers are actually aware of food waste issues.
Good morning, everyone. As a next step, I'm going to talk about the overall reflection. I'd like to share in which points our research process was successful and challenging. Our group thinks that the topic on disposal of food leftovers at the UPEACE cafeteria was interesting to get the research done. Food is common and intriguing topic for UPEACE students, and we could also address sustainability from this topic. As we learn from our social research method, considering the research ethic is an important component. We think having collective feedback from the third party regarding the interview guides help us to consider the points that we could have missed. For example, Our group had a chance to talk with Ingrid, Itaro, and Pan's group about the draft of interview guides. From this discussion, we could consider the view from people who might have eating disorders or other physical and mental health disorders, which may be sensitive to discuss for some when we have interview on disposing leftover food. So we could reflect this point in our informed consent form. We tried to make our interview guides using the neutral words. Draft version of our interview guide said food waste, but we changed this term later to disposing food leftover. This kind of change would help to talk about the uncomfortable issue easier. Since our group member is not being present at UPEACE campus, finding 5 interviewees could be difficult. You could find 5 interviewees by posting at the UPEACE student WhatsApp group, as well as hard copy version of poster about our research with Professor Mary's help. To do our group work, we have another difficult factors. It was time. We are in different time zone from Asia, Europe, and America. Considering the different time zone, we gathered before and after the class to get together our ideas. But we still think that there are some spaces to be improved for a better result. We could interview more than 5 UP students, which could reflect diversity of gender, majors, nationalities, and so on to listen more diverse opinion. Even we could interview different groups other than students, such as cafeteria staffs, UP visitors, and so on. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
So, to sum up the presentation, we found that the main causes of why people throw out their food leftovers is, according to themselves, the big portion sizes that you cannot choose, as well as a dislike for the food in the cafeteria and its repetitiveness. Based on these causes, both the interviewees and us came up with some potential solutions. Firstly, if people are able to choose their portion themselves, they are probably less likely to get too much food. And another solution is having simply more food options that are just a snack, but not a full meal. And finally, to make more people like the food, the cafeteria could offer some more variety to ensure that the people like it and that it isn't repetitive. Some participants also suggested solutions that don't relate to the causes of food waste per se. These are more awareness building, proper waste management, such as turning food waste into dog feed or compost. And lastly, of course, it's always a good idea to help each other finish. I think that our findings really demonstrate that the environment that people are in determines whether their behavior is socially desirable or not. Our participants didn't waste food because they don't care, but because they were in an environment where food waste is accidentally promoted. And while this could be because participants like pointing to causes outside of their control, the so-called choice environment is still probably a big factor of campus food waste. And therefore, I'd like to finish with the following quote by Richard Taylor from the book Nudge. Just as no building lacks an architecture, so no choice lacks a context. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Of course, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Last but not the least, these were the list of references which we had consulted during our group presentation. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Thank